the tea lovers. Settle in, because we've got a story. I'm Nell.
And I'm Rose. And today we're bringing you the tea.
Across eras.
Alrighty, welcome back.
Welcome back, Season 2, Episode 2.
So this one is actually, I promised this episode, I'm sure all four of you that remember this have just
At least 14, ma'am.
Drooling for the Alchemy of Color.
I am.
So when we were talking about Pompeii, one of the really cool new discoveries was the so-called Blue Room.
Yes.
Which is thought to be a private chapel, and it was in the midst of a renovation. And so a lot of the building materials were left. They dropped the building materials as they were running for their lives. So they were repairing right up until the disaster.
Yep.
But the content of the color, like, I was so interested in what the composition of the fresco paint in that Blue Room was, and I still haven't figured it out. I haven't found an article or resource yet that talks about what the composition of the paint is, and I'm probably just looking in the wrong place.
Do you mean composition like 1 part water, 3 parts latex, or like 3 parts blue, 2 parts yellow?
More like 1 part water, 3 part latex, but
Okay.
It's so much more deliciously complicated than that. And so, as promised, I want to talk today about some of the more magical components of historic colors, because pigment is chemistry. There are very few pigments that are naturally occurring,
Yeah.
and there are very few colors that you can get from natural sources without some kind of alteration.
Yep.
And we've been synthesizing colors, as it turns out, for several thousand years as humans.
That's not that surprising to me.
It surprised the heck out of me. I think I just always underestimate how early we as people decided to set things on fire and then just take things from there. You know, what happens when I heat this?
I honestly would say that before we started this podcast, I would have felt the same way. But I have definitely learned that humans were doing human things like forever.
I think that's part of the joy is it's constantly surprising.
It is. It is.
And of course, because this is cyclical history, what I want to relate the story of pigments and particularly scarcity of ingredients and ownership of pigment recipes.
Dun, dun, dun.
I want to connect it to one of my very favorite artist dramas.
I love this artist drama. It's the only one I've known of ever. But
we watched this unfold in real time in 2016. So a little bit of background here. What the story is Anish Kapoor and the controversy behind Vanta Black.
Vanta Black.
Now, if you haven't experienced this, there are a lot of really great in-depth articles. A lot of my sources just for today came from an article in The Collector, which we'll post on our website. So I think I encountered this first in a Jezebel article where they were talking about the rivalry between Anish Kapoor and Stuart Semple. Stuart Semple, his entrance basically changed what was going on with the blackest black in the whole wide world.
Okay.
In a way that I don't think anybody else could have. But the major players were not just the two of them.
I also read about it on Jezebel.
Mm-hmm.
I used to go to their website a lot, or maybe you told me about it. I don't know.
Background on the story. So Anish Kapoor, if you're unfamiliar, and I was, is a sculptor and avant-garde artist from the UK that is most famous for a sculpture in Chicago, colloquially known as the Bean.
What do you mean colloquially known? That's his real legal name.
Apparently, it's actually called Cloudgate. So it is actually just a giant bean that is covered in very highly shiny reflective material.
Yeah.
And it's meant to be reflecting the sky down at you. And so, a gate into the clouds. And while that may have been a lofty goal, sir, you made a bean.
Also, the thing about being an artist is once it's out there, it's not yours anymore,
You
really.
do not control it once you've given it to the world. You have some guardrails, but that's it. I mean,
it's rough.
People are paying you for your concepts and your audience, much like any other performer or artist. Your audience is who creates you. So have some respect.
Right.
So he's been knighted, actually, which I didn't realize. He's Sir Anish Kapoor. He won a Turner Prize in 1991. So fast forward to 2006, the bean is installed. He starts being curmudgeonly towards people. I'm sure that wasn't the start. But in 2016, a company called Surrey Nanosystems invented Vanta Black. which was capable of refracting more light away from an object than any other substance before.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on nanotube technology, and it was made for engineering purposes.
Oh, interesting.
And beautifully cool substance. Unfortunately, not very readily available in an artistic sense because it requires very special conditions to apply.
Okay.
And it's I think it almost acts more like a glaze. You have to be in a lab environment to use it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so it is really more for engineering purposes. But so almost immediately, Anish Kapoor made a deal with Surrey Nanosystems to have exclusive rights over the artistic applications of Vantablack.
Now, how does that work? Because it's a color. So if someone says, no, Nellie, you can't use pink anymore, I'm not going to listen to them.
That's why this is so interesting as a tie-in to the historic ownership of colors, because it depends. It depends on the situation, but the way that you control colors is by controlling either the component materials, the secrecy of the recipe, or the environment in which it can be created.
Okay.
So in his own way, he was fulfilling all of the historic requirements of controlling the means of production by making the deal with Surrey Nanosystems. I feel like he was cheating because traditionally, when you were limiting access to a color, you either had an intrinsic part in its creation,
Yeah.
or you had control over its ingredients.
I guess I didn't realize that he didn't actually create the color.
Exactly. So what business did you have coming in and limiting that if you didn't have any hand in its creation? I mean, and that's a philosophical question. It is.
Right. So one time I pulled the label off of a product I had purchased, and this product was in collaboration with a very big pink movie. And I took that label to my local paint place and I said, I would like this paint color. And they said, cool. And I went to the plant department and then I came back and the girl was super weird. She was like, our machine just won't make this color, and handed it back to me. And I was like, that's odd. And then I thought about it. And so I cut off, like right there, ripped off the like heavily trademarked item. And then I came back a few days later without the name, just the color. And I said, I would like this paint. I'm painting my bathroom this. And they said, okay. And I bought it and I left.
Yeah, because they will have restrictions on branded things, but those colors are copyrighted. It's kind of similar to the Pantone Color of the Year.
Yeah.
Like, that seems like a real fun time. They copyright the formulas for those colors, and they copyright the digital formulas for those colors as well.
Sometimes they pick the most busty colors, though.
Honestly, it's always been like beige and pastel recently. I'm just like, can we have a jewel tone?
You know what, though? With that particular shade of pink I was going for, I'm sure that particular color deal was worked out between the two companies, but it's not the usual color. Like, I still have a lot of those certain things in those certain boxes, and it's not any of those colors, but maybe it was the new color they used for the movie. I don't know. Like Reese Witherspoon's blonde hair in Legally Blonde.
And what's interesting is that their refusal to mix that is based on the branding on the bottle, not based on any other component parts of the color.
That's so interesting.
It brings it right back to a philosophical question. Like, did you really copyright that particular formula if you can't even prove that somebody's using that formula unless they used your branded containers?
Right? And
that's such a squishy zone.
Please don't sue me because I painted my bathroom door and door jamb that color. Like, I'm not making any money off this, trust me.
And what those lawsuits entail are usually like, major corporations that are using it. But it doesn't not happen. We used to get cease and desist letters from Disney all the time at the library I worked at in mountainous middle of nowhere, because we were allowing kids to sit down and watch Disney movies off of the VHSs that we had, and someone ratted.
Yeah. When my kiddo was in Girl Scouts, one night we did a sleep at the zoo. My goodness, I've never gotten so little sleep in my life.
Oh, yeah, no.
And not because I was sleeping at the zoo on the ground in a tent with animals, but because of all the other kids. But we were supposed to watch some Disney movie, but then the zoo was like, oh my goodness, no.
No,
so we watched Happy Feet.
But yeah, so the idea of controlling either the recipe, the materials, or the means of production, that's not new.
Okay.
That's as old as synthesizing pigments. So one of the earliest synthesized colors that we made as humans is Egyptian blue. And
What a great color to come
as
up with first.
I know, because blue occurs in nature in fascinating variety, but blue that you can actually recreate from natural
Right.
pigments, not a thing hardly anywhere. You've got woad as a dye, which is super prominent in tapestries, super prominent basically until indigo.
Woad.
Woad, WOAD.
Color.
It is a plant. Actually, the name comes from, I believe, Celtic for
Okay.
weed,
Oh.
because it grows
Oh.
so well. But
Anything that grows well is a weed. Okay,
yeah,
got it.
but it turns out if you ferment that with some also fermented cowpea, it makes a very beautiful blue dye that never stops smelling like cowpea.
Oh, all of that was so nice until the end. I was imagining some like cow peeing on this weed, and then I don't really
Mm.
know under what conditions it became fermented.
One of the plot points in one of my favorite books, The Lady and the Unicorn by Tracy Chevalier, one of the big plot points is that a main character is supposed to marry a woad dyer, and it's considered like a real step down for her because no one could possibly be expected to live with that smell
Right.
that hadn't been born into the business. And so like the whole time he's just this, you can smell him before you can see him because
Oh, how unfortunate.
you're treading woad in fermented, I think it was sheep's piss.
Oh,
But either way, and that's the thing is urine makes the best mordant for like a bunch of dyes. So people were just a lot more comfortable with urine in the past. Like,
I mean, we've talked about urine in the past, not a few times
yeah, no,
in our podcast.
because I mean, how are you going to get ammonia otherwise from natural sources?
I don't
You
know.
don't have any other like ways of synthesizing that. You're getting your ammoniac liquids from piss. That's just happening.
You.
Uh,
Okay, so
So Egyptian blue is considered the first synthesized color, and it was so valued that Phoenician traders actually would give it to their trading partners as a thank you. Like it wasn't even up for trade. It was just like, here's a little bit of this beautiful pigment that we're not going to tell you how we made, but isn't it great?
nice.
And the fame of the Phoenicians rises.
All right.
But apparently it is absolutely simple to make in terms of ingredients, but the thing that was considered secret and that we actually lost for quite a long time was the proportions and the heat.
Oh,
So all you need is lime, calcinated limestone, and sand, as well as some mineral that contains copper, either the gemstone malachite, the bluestone azurite, or even bronze filings.
or a penny?
It depends on what year.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I forgot that part.
Also, at the moment, I'm quoting from The Brilliant History of Color and Art by Victoria Finlay, which I recommend very highly. We'll put that in our library. Really fun read.
I'm just imagining gathering those things.
Yeah.
Well, oh, and a penny. Perfect.
And a penny. The challenge was that the quantities had to be carefully measured and the furnace had to be heated between 1470 and 1650 degrees, which is why I'm laughing about the home project.
Degrees
Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit? I was like, holy bananas. Okay, I mean, that's still really high at Fahrenheit.
If it was too hot, the mixture turned into a kind of glassy green mess. If it was too cold, it turned to another kind of glassy green mess. But if you got it just right, the ancient Egyptians would get an opaque blue crystalline material,
Ooh.
which you could then grind and add to egg tempera is actually one of our oldest mixing mediums. But you have things like gum arabic, anything that's going to suspend the pigment and still allow it to show through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so we actually didn't kind of reinvent it until the 19th century.
Wow.
One of the most recent discoveries about Egyptian blue is actually one of the coolest. We're still discovering things about the amazing chemical properties of this formula that was invented thousands and thousands of years ago. In 2006, a conservation scientist named Giovanni Veri, in his lab at the Getty, he was studying a painted marble basin, 4th century Greek. Hardly any pigment left.
Except that blue.
Except that blue. It's been under really harsh conditions. He didn't even realize that the Egyptian blue was present. But because of a fluke thing that had gone down in his lab, his primary infrared study source was unavailable. And so he picks up the fluorescent version and goes, well, we don't really see a whole lot with this, but I can't use the other machine right now. I guess we'll take a look. and ended up inadvertently discovering that Egyptian blue emits infrared radiation.
Whoa.
So it acts almost exactly like the glow-in-the-dark pigments that I'm using today that intake infrared light and then spit it back. And so he accidentally discovered that you can have pieces that have been underground, that have been in bad, wet environments, that have been underwater. If any trace of Egyptian blue was used on it at all and remains, it will spit back a glow under
That's
fluorescent
so
infrared.
cool.
I know. So we're still discovering things about it now.
Oh, awesome.
But the thing that made Egyptian blue so valuable beyond its actual beauty was its scarcity, was that because the way that it was produced was kept secret. And so continuing in the line of blues, we're blowing right past ultramarine. We'll come back to it. I wanted to talk about Klein blue.
Klein
So
blue.
have you ever heard of Klein blue? It's okay.
I don't think so.
I hadn't.
Is there a crayon named that?
No, Mr. Tree Root painting up on the wall there.
The middle one?
Yes, is painted with Klein blue.
Oh,
well,
it's a nice blue.
With a dupe of Klein blue.
Yeah.
Klein blue is interesting because Ives Klein made it interesting. It's a very cool, beautiful color that kind of it sinks you into what he was trying to create was the depth of the sky and the depth of the ocean. He wanted something that you could swim in.
I think he did that.
I really think that he achieved that. And what I have is a very high quality version of Klein blue. Klein blue is its own thing.
And this is just one color.
This is just one color.
Wow.
The reason that it pops out and it has that matte quality is because he worked with people to create a pigment that was suspended in very clear media, so you could see the depth of the grains of pigment much more easily.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. But his whole story is a celebration of breaking artistic barriers, and naming his own color was only just the tiniest part of it. So Klein, in 1958, I'm going to quote this from the same book, Victoria Finley's book. In 1958, an upcoming French artist invited the Paris Smart Set to an exhibition. Uniformed guards stood outside the entrance to the gallery, and the windows were painted and draped with a particular intense blue. But inside there was nothing at all. It was a pristine, pure white space with no canvases in sight, and the evening ended in a near riot. If the guests had read their invitations properly, they might have guessed. The show was subtitled The Void. He started his career by printing out a little book of monochromes. He was the person that pioneered monochromes. The idea of having just an orange canvas in a gallery, you have Klein to thank for that. But in order to get into the Smart Set and into the right spheres to get into galleries, he printed a book of fake mono canvases.
Nice.
They were just squares of colors that he had chosen, and he named it things like Orange Canvas, Paris, 1958, Purple Square, Madrid.
I love that.
He hadn't painted any of them anywhere. They didn't exist anywhere except in that little book. But the booklet itself, he claimed, was a performance art.
Why not?
Exactly. That just showcased the emptiness of this juried process. And then, so of course, then he did create mono canvases and was trying to show them. And there was this great quote from the Salon de Réalité Nouvelle, where he tried to submit an orange monochrome, which was rejected with the comment, "If Ives would just accept to add at least a little line or a dot or even simply a spot of another color, then we could show it. But a single color, no, really, that's not enough. That's impossible."
Wow.
Paintings must begin with a color and end with another color. They may not just be colors. Well, now they may, because someone stepped out and asked why.
Right.
And so the idea of naming a color after yourself is impossibly vain and gauche to this set. And he broke that barrier again. No, I created this process. I am intrinsically involved in the creation of this color. And so naming it after myself is the most natural thing in the world.
I totally agree. I'd name everything after my first name.
So I'm going to talk about one more synthesized color that will actually bring us back around to our modern art controversy.
Okay.
So when you think of purple, like a royal purple, what do you first think of?
Like royalty, obviously, is the first thing. And then Lydia, seller of purple.
It's a royal color. We still think of it as connected to royalty.
Uh-huh.
Tyrian purple is the most ancient version of purple. It is actually a natural pigment. It's made from whelks, which are little clams, and it actually takes 250,000 Murex whelks to make enough dye for a single robe.
That's depressing.
If you go to Tyr now, they still have the tubs that were used to wash out the color from the whelks. On the seaside, you were not allowed to actually make the dye in a city because it smelled so bad.
Nice.
And so anytime you have someone wearing the royal purple, it just guaranteed that they stank of fish.
Gross.
Which actually became desirable in some circles because it was the scent of success. Because
Yeah,
only
pal,
wealthy
sure.
people could use it.
Dude, no.
And those, the wearing of purple, it was controlled as much with sumptuary laws as it was by just the scarcity of the ingredients. Yeah. And so I think that skirts a little bit towards the Anish Kapoor and Vantablack thing. Doesn't that feel like a little bit of a sumptuary law where he's kind of flopping his foot down and saying, well, this isn't for you poor artists. This is only for grand, great artists like I. It just feels like it's a modern sumptuary law. What's also interesting about Tyrian purple, just side note, not really purple, presented as like pinks and reds, and because it wasn't intense in the first place and had like just a wide variation because it's a naturally sourced thing. It's like dyeing things from flowers. You're going to have a varied result. Yeah. But like there's an example here of an illuminated manuscript that is set in Tyre, and she is supposed to be wearing Tyrian purple, and that's real pink.
Yeah, that's definitely pink.
What we actually think of as purple is, and now this is a matter of opinion. Do you say mauve or mauve?
Mauve.
Okay, because I've heard both, but I say mauve too, so I think we're going with
what's
mauve.
What's a mauve?
Mauve apparently is when you're British. So yes. Mauve is really what I would have considered Tyrian purple before I realized how pink Tyrian purple really was.
Right? I really like the dress in this example. It reminds me a good bit of the purple dress that Young Thug wore on the cover of one of his rap albums.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'll show it to you after this.
Okay.
Check out our website for a pic.
So we have mauve because of an accident, actually. It is a highly synthesized color that is made from coal tar.
Oh.
I know, right?
Gross.
We only have purple because of coal tar. That was a sad thing I learned this week. But a chemistry student had been given coal tar to experiment with. So this was in 1856. Student William Henry Perkin. So they were using gas lamps more and more in city works at this point, and they were getting a lot of byproduct in the form of coal tar. And yeah. So refineries just had this stuff stacking up, and chemists were saying, "Hey, let's see what the properties are of this. We've already realized fantastic properties from these
check a thing out.
Fossil fuels, fractional distillation. Here we come." So this chemistry student gets tasked with creating an alternative to quinine for curing malaria. Which seems like a really tall ask for a student. Like, hey, we found this substance that we don't know what it does, but it probably does interesting things. Cure malaria.
Right. I'm all, I don't know if I can do that.
I feel like I maybe missed a couple of steps in that assignment, but...
Right. Where's the connection between this waste and malaria?
Mm-hmm. So he's experimenting and not really getting anywhere, shockingly, but realizes in cleaning out his flasks one day that he has created a startlingly beautiful color, which for a little while he ended up naming Tyrian purple in tribute to the original purple. Apparently it did not market well, so they changed the color to mauve. The color, however, was so fantastically successful that its popularity was called the mauve measles.
The mauve measles?
We love it so much, we have to have it. It's viral. It was 1800s viral. So a lot of other colors came out of coal tar as well, madder being one, madder, which is a bright, brilliant red that doesn't involve crushing millions of tiny cochineal bugs, which sadly we're going to skip the cochineal story today, but it is interesting, worth looking up. So coal tar madder gave us things like fuchsia and beautiful bright pinks and bathroom colors galore. And
yes, it did.
Yes, ma'am. So pink brings us back around to our favorite modern controversy, Stuart Semple enters the chat with Anish Kapoor. So Stuart Semple is a pigment creator and artist in his own right that is also from the UK that looked at the purchasing of a color as just a rank affront to the community of artists. And I can't say
It's
that I
like to the
disagree.
community of the
To
world,
community,
man.
yeah, to take anything that is an amazing innovation and immediately lock it down and be like, not for you. So Stuart Semple came back and created a pigment called the Pinkest Pink.
Yep.
It's a great pigment. He's got really cool powder pigments and very nice mixing mediums to boot. And I use his stuff a lot. It was directly because of this whole thing that I actually figured out that his shop was a thing. Yeah, so he comes back with the Pinkest Pink, and it was a statement piece. He wasn't actually expecting it to take off. But in the legal disclaimer on the website, when you're purchasing it, you have to legally declare that you are not Anish Kapoor, that you are never not associated with Anish Kapoor, and you will never provide this gorgeous, exclusively pink to Anish Kapoor. It is available for the whole world except for this guy, and how do you like it? And it was apparently originally meant to just be that one-off statement, like, hey, you're being a dick. This is what it feels like.
Right?
And somehow Anish Kapoor gets a hold of Pinkest Pink and posts an Instagram post of his middle finger covered in it. And
Wow.
we were off.
Classy.
Classy move, dude. You can't just quietly be called out and move on with your rich ass life. No, you have to enter the fray and lose spectacularly.
Sounds like the author of some of my favorite book series about a wizarding school.
You just can't sit back and enjoy your success and influence. You have to come out and poke people. Hate it.
Wait, can I be for real? If I had that much money, peace out.
I would
I'm making sure all the school kids in my city get 3 meals a day and the libraries are funded. Yeah.
So after the Instagram post, that was actually the motivation behind Stuart Semple putting his inventing hat on and creating Black 2.0, which is widely available, easy to apply, acts for all intents and purposes like Vantablack. It is, of course, not quite as refractive as the lab applied coating, but it's as close as you're going to get. And I just really appreciate this detail. It's cherry scented.
It is?
It is. So I use Black 2.0. I use it in a ton of my art. I will continue to do so. There is actually a Black 3.0 now that is even better, but I actually prefer the 2.0. So in responding to criticism like a child rather than adult, Anish Kapoor actually priced himself right out of the Blackest Black game because he's actually only been able to do very sparing artworks with the lab created applications because you have to book time with the lab. You have to meticulously plan your product before you arrive, and you're competing with engineering products for time. Meanwhile, any artist with $25 and a dream can create things like the Firebird over there.
Pretend I'm Nelson from The Simpsons.
And then just to put another little cherry on top, Stuart Semple also made the world's glitteriest glass glitter, which...
Is that what's in that jar?
No.
Oh, I stare at that jar a lot.
That is actually a super matte white ink that I'm going to start using on the black canvas. But it acts a bit like the 2.0. It's just I actually got to be part of the beta test.
Oh, yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah.
Is that powder in there, though?
No, it's ink.
Okay, see, when I look at it, I immediately think it's powder. It looks like a large size of basically like some really cute body glitter you might buy yourself. And so my intrusive thoughts that I just kind of like want to like twist the cap off and toss it in the air and take a picture of it. I'm not going to. And I do feel that it is liquid now.
We were driving to a show once where my partner was doing the intermission entertainment. He is a fire juggler. And he was doing the intermission entertainment for a belly dancing group that we had some good friends in. And so our friend was getting ready in the car. And just at this moment where she opened this super, super tiny little thing of micro gold glitter right when he rolled down the window, and they just didn't make eye contact at the right moment or anything. But it was the prettiest thing I've ever seen. It was just this little whirlwind of gold that flew around all of us, missed us all, and flew out the window.
Wow.
Like, I felt so bad for her because it was such a waste of product, but it was just like, we all just could have gotten glitter bombed right now. And instead, I feel like we were just kissed by the fairies of travel.
Wow.
So as an added cherry on top,
I get it now.
at the same time as the Black 2.0 creation, which was his own like passion project, I think it is very cool that he's created so many accessible pigments.
Yeah.
Side note that dupe of Klein Blue that I use, also a Stuart Semple creation.
Okay.
But as an extra little screw you back
Mm-hmm.
to Anish Kapoor, he also created the world's glitteriest glass glitter.
Yeah.
It's a really cool material. It's just tiny little flakes of extremely thin broken glass, of very highly refractive glass that were you to say stick your middle finger in it, because Nish Kapoor is also not allowed to purchase this product, you would have a little bit of a time.
My mouth
Stick
just
your
fell.
finger in that. So the real end of the controversy came in 2019 when MIT developed a material that was blacker than Vantablack.
Oh.
It was still created for engineering purposes first, but they did do an amazing installation called the Redemption of Vanity, which is a gigantic diamond coated in the blackest black to create a gigantic diamond void.
Well, who
Monetarily
has this diamond
wasteful.
laying around?
On the other hand, I adore the what it says. I adore the concept.
Yeah,
I think
totally.
that's very cool. The team at MIT came out with a specific statement, and I quote, "This project can also be interpreted as a statement against British artist Anish Kapoor's purchase of exclusive rights to a formula of carbon nanotubes as a material for artworks."
They call them out by name.
Strabe and Wardle use a different composition of nanotubes, which will be available for any artist to use.
What are nanotubes?
I'm explaining this as a non-expert, but basically it is tricking your eye. They're moving minute materials into a specific alignment that specifically absorbs light. And the way that your eye perceives objects is by how much light it refracts back at you.
Yeah.
So it acts as a real and metaphorical void.
Okay. I love all of this. This is amazing.
So the Alchemy of Color could be 15 episodes, but what I love is that we're still asking ourselves those questions about ownership, about involvement, about artistic integrity. And I think we will always be asking ourselves these questions. And I think that this particular conversation was awesome.
I agree. Hey, go like and comment and share. Maybe leave us a review or 5. Just
And
kidding.
thank you for sticking with us.
Yeah, we're happy to be back. Bye-bye.